Okay, guys, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Now, fasten your seatbelts. Here we go. All right, guys, I'm back, and it is Saturday, November the 30th, and it is 10:10 p.m. Now, this is my second try at this video, and I've got a fisherman's friend in my mouth because I went into a coughing fit again. So I took a break, had a fisherman's friend, and hopefully, it might be a friend of a fisherman, but it's not a friend of mine because it tastes awful. But if it works, it works. Now, what we're going to do today is we're going to pick up from where we left off in the last video. Now, the last video that I did was the one on London, and I was going to go on from there and do another video on Q-related news. Well, that didn't work out so well because I had coughing fits and I could not stop myself. So we're going to try again, and I don't know how far I'll get. Hopefully I'll get through one video, and you never know, I might get through two. So we're going to pick up from there, right from where I left off, and we're going to cover some of the things that I was going to cover last night, and some maybe getting a little bit old by now, so we'll kind of pick and choose here. All right, and I do have some people to thank, including one lady who just absolutely went above and beyond. She made me a gift that is absolutely extraordinary, and I want to show you all her handiwork because, my gosh, it's gorgeous. My parents were here for supper, and they were both admiring it. And my mother was really admiring it, and I said, no, you cannot have it. So anyway, all right, let's get involved in this. Let's get up all into it. All right. Ex-chief advisor for a UN children's program has been convicted and jailed for pedophilia. Now, and you can see him here pictured with Justin Trudeau, or Justine, as I like to call him. And the facts: Peter Dalglish, an Order of Canada recipient and an ex-chief advisor for a United Nations children's program, has been convicted for sexual assault against children, but maintains that he is innocent. Elite-level pedophilia is a reality the world is starting to wake up to more. People in positions of power, especially ones that make major decisions about our world, may be involved in not just the abuse of children, but ritual abuse and murder. With Jeffrey Epstein and Prince Andrew making headlines across mainstream media around the globe, many people who weren't aware of elite-level pedophilia have now had their minds blown wide open. Despite the fact that there has been strong evidence of this activity for decades, many people dumped this topic in the conspiracy theory category, and many professionals actually categorized victims who came forward as having schizophrenia. It's far from a conspiracy, and based on years of research here at Collective Evolution, the trafficking of children and elite pedophilia goes even beyond that and into the murder and ritual abuse of children. A large percentage of the global elite are implicated in the royal families, the Vatican, and in the fields of finance, politics, and other places of great power. We are talking about the majority of people who set political policy, control our finances, and people we are made to idolize. The latest example, apart from the Jeffrey Epstein stuff, comes from Peter Dalglish, an Order of Canada recipient and an ex-chief advisor for the United Nations Child Labor Program. He has quite the resume. Apart from being a senior UN official, he founded the charity known as Street Kids International. The police force in Nepal took Dalglish from his home a couple of years ago in a district north of Kathmandu. The police said that 2 children, aged 12 and 14 years old, were rescued from the home. The police alleged that the children were lured with a promise of education, work, and foreign travel before they were sexually abused by Dalglish. Kabit Katwal, this deputy superintendent of the Nepal police, whose investigation led to the arrest of Dalglish, said the following: "We made several surveillances for several days, and it is the outcome of our dedication. We've spent a lot of time to bring Peter Dalglish into the frame of justice. We firmly believe he'll be convicted because he's committed the crime. We are pretty sure that the case will not fail. The evidence is there. The confession is there. The victims clearly told the story of how they became victimized, so everything is crystal clear." He was right. After spending more than a year in jail near Kathmandu, the well-known Canadian aid worker has now been found guilty of sexually assaulting children in Nepal. Dalgleish denies the charge, but has been found guilty Dalgleish denies the charge that he's been found guilty of, according to CBC News. His Canadian lawyer, Nader Hassan, said Dalgleish's family and friends are devastated by the verdict and that his legal team plans to file an appeal. Hassan said there is no clear timeline when the judge will issue a written verdict or when sentencing will take place, both of which have to happen before he can file an appeal. Dalgleish, 61, could be facing a prison sentence of 10 years or longer. Now, I'm going to skip down here Well, actually, this is important. An Associated Press investigation into the United Nations revealed that over the past 12 years, there have been approximately 2,000 allegations of sexual abuse and exploitation by UN peacekeepers and other employees around the world. Over 300 of these cases involve children. However, very few perpetrators have actually been arrested and held accountable for their crimes. Ex-Nebraska policewoman Catherine Bolkovac, who served as a UN peacekeeper and worked under DynCorp, a military contractor. Yeah, we know all about DynCorp. Where she learned about elite-level sex trafficking involving the UN, the State Department, and military, also has been quite active in exposing this type of activity as well. You can read more about that here. We're not going to go there today anyway. And it goes deeper. A paper by Dr. Rainer Kurtz, published in European Psychiatry, entitled The Cremation of Care Ritual, Burning of Effigies, or Human Sacrifice Murder, The Importance of Differentiating Complex Trauma from Schizophrenia in Extreme Abuse Settings, says that such revelations of child sexual abuse have put us in a new reality. In the wake of institutional abuse inquiries and the unbelievable child abuse perpetrated by celebrities like Jimmy Savile and Ian Watkins, a new reality is setting in that child abuse is pervasive and knows no limits. Reports of elaborate rituals with mock human sacrifices at the highly secretive annual Bohemian Grove Summer Festival point toward a pervasive interest in the occult in high society. Mental health professionals have a duty of care toward their service users. Unless clear and irrefutable counter evidence is available, it is appropriate to claim that disclosures of extreme abuse and or human sacrifice rituals are delusions and indicative of schizophrenia. So it's saying that it's not it's inappropriate, rather, not appropriate. It's inappropriate to be saying that these people that are talking about these horrific stories of abuse and ritual abuse are schizophrenic and just writing it off. When it comes to these pedophile rings and what goes on within them, the paper linked above cites multiple papers and explains multiple cases. So we're not going to get into all this, but it is interesting. It has an interview with a survivor. So yeah, this is great. And of course, the link will be uploaded to the broadcast notes will be uploaded to Patreon. So you'll be able to check it out there if you want to read this more in depth, but we've got a lot to get to. So I am going to move on for now. Let me get out of here, all these. All right. And by the way, there is no Q links today. So we are going to go on here. Let's look at this. I'm sorry to drink in front of you tea. It's tea, but the warm helps my throat. So I know it's rude, but it's probably the only way I can keep going without my voice acting up. Impeachment inquiry fizzles, changes zero minds as Americans tune out. Now, this is from November 29th, yesterday, and we can see this guy right here. Yeah. President Trump is being impeached by Democrats who control the House of Representatives, and after 3 days of contentious testimony with breathless headlines deeming breaking every 5 minutes, you know how many minds have been changed? Zero. Zero minds. Zippy the chimp. Here's why. Republicans believe Trump was well within his rights to withhold foreign aid as he asked the president of Ukraine to look into possible criminal activities by former Vice President Joseph R. Biden and his son Hunter. They think Trump is simply being persecuted. Meanwhile, Democrats think that Trump has violated all sorts of laws, as well as the tenets of the Constitution laid out by the Founding Fathers with a supposed quid pro quo. They believe Trump is a danger to democracy. I would disagree with this. This is from the Gateway Pundit, but I disagree with that. I don't think Republicans really think that he has broken any laws at all. They're just hoping that they can throw enough crap at him that some will stick and people will believe it. I don't think that they think he's guilty at all. They know, but that's just a difference of opinion. And the 24-hour news channels aren't helping viewers making the heads or tails of the daily flood of information. It's harder now. They want to grab you with those headlines. Gere Corrigan of Stevens Point, Wisconsin, told the New York Times last week, Trump did this, Trump did that. You have to go in and really research it. And I don't think a lot of people do that. I just don't know what to think. You would have to know the facts, and I don't know what I'm getting the facts from the media, whether I'm getting the facts from the media right now. And it's true. I think, even people that are diehard Democrats are thinking, I'm not sure we're getting the real story here. And they're not. Now, more than ever, the lines between fact-based reporting and opinionated commentary seems blurred for people. Yvette Alexander, research director at the Knight Foundation, which funds journalism and research, told The Times that means they trust what they are seeing less. They are feeling less informed. And add social media to that nonstop flow of partisan political coverage. Millions of people see stories on their Facebook and Twitter feeds every day from all kinds of unreliable sources and then pass them on to other politically like-minded people without knowing whether they're true or not. Plus, the standards for what constitutes news nowadays has plunged. Venerable newspapers like the New York Times and the Washington Post routinely publish pieces full of unnamed sources. Single source stories, once verboten, are now de rigueur. Anything derogatory about Trump quickly becomes fact, like the recent allegation, again from an anonymous source, that he wanted to build an alligator-filled moat along the U.S.-Mexico border. Books, too, hit the shelves full of uncorroborated tales. In a warning released Tuesday and written by Anonymous, a writer described only as a senior official in the Trump administration, the Post said the book paints a chilling portrait of the president as cruel, inept, and a danger to the nation he was elected to lead. Sure. Liberals lapped it up. And why wouldn't they? Meanwhile, other news reports and books back Trump. Donald Trump Jr.'s book, Triggered: How the Left Thrives on Hate and Wants to Silence Us, raced to the top of the Times bestseller list. The president himself often touts books favorable to him, and conservatives lap that up. Then there are the politicians themselves. Just take the past few days. Trump went to the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center over the weekend for a few tests. Conspiracy theories exploded. He was clearly having a dramatic heart episode. The rumors persisted until the White House released a statement from Trump's doctor saying the visit was routine. I still don't believe that, personally, but that's okay. We can't all think alike, and it would be dangerous if we did. So let me see. On the other side, Trump fired out a tweet on Tuesday quoting House Speaker Nancy Pelosi as saying, "It is dangerous to let the voters decide Trump's fate." She never said that. It was, in fact, Fox News Channel's chief congressional correspondent, Mike Emanuel, but Trump's post was liked and retweeted more than 100,000 times. So here's what we know going into week 2 of the impeachment inquiry. The people who disapprove of Trump support impeachment. The people who support Trump don't. Each side has about half, like the 2016 election when 65.8 million people voted for Hillary Clinton and 62.9 million voted for Trump. Nothing else that comes out in the inquiry will matter. Minds are made up. The House will vote to impeach. Democrats will cheer, Republicans will jeer, then the Senate will not vote to convict, Republicans will applaud, Democrats will boo, and then we'll be back to square one. The entire impeachment exercise is pointless. In 11 months, Americans will decide whether Trump is a two-termer or if a Democrat gets to pick out the new drapes for the Oval Office. But until then, good luck trying to figure out the facts. Well, isn't that the truth? It is getting almost impossible to figure out the facts. And, we really have to do due diligence, because there is just like the reporter that said that Trump spent his Thanksgiving golfing when actually he was over in Afghanistan feeding the troops on Thanksgiving Day. Yeah, that's inexcusable. Inexcusable. All right, let's go back now. And let's look at this meme. It says, this is Joe Morrissey. He has been arrested 5 times and is a convicted felon for the statutory rape of a minor when he was in his 50s. He was disbarred after his law license was suspended 2 times and was indicted on federal charges of possession and distribution of child pornography. Oh, and Democrats just elected him as their new state senator for Virginia. True story, people. True story. Yeah, Virginia, what are you doing? Hang on. I'm going to get myself some more tea here. You can't stop me. Well, you could try, but you don't know where I am. All right. So let's go on now. I'm going to skip over that for now. Let me see. Okay. Let's look at this from the Epoch Times. All right. Washington's leak culture can't penetrate Spygate investigation. Well, that's good news. There haven't been any leaks. There have been no leaks from the IG report. And the ones that they claim are coming out, I don't believe. I don't believe them. CNN published an article on November 22nd revealing that U.S. Attorney John Durham has expanded his criminal investigation into the origins of the Russiagate hoax. The CNN report stated that a former FBI lawyer was under investigation for altering a key document that was used to obtain a FISA surveillance warrant renewal on former Trump campaign official Carter Page. Following CNN's breaking of the story, several other media outlets published reports saying the FBI lawyer in question is Kevin Kleinsmith, who resigned from the special counsel team led by Robert Mueller in February 2018 after Department of Justice Inspector General Michael Horowitz uncovered signs of an unprofessional conduct during the early stages of the FBI's counterintelligence probe of the Trump campaign. Kleinsmith reportedly resigned from the FBI about 2 months ago. As reported by the Washington Examiner, Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz's investigators found Kleinsmith falsely asserted he had documentation to back up a claim while in talks with the Justice Department about the factual basis for a FISA warrant application renewal. He then took an email from an official from another agency that contained multiple factual assertions, added material of his own, and gave it to a fellow FBI official who was preparing an affidavit for the Page case. Kleinsmith has been described in many media reports as a low-level attorney, but Horowitz said he was a primary FBI attorney assigned to the Trump-Russia investigation in early 2017. The last renewal of the Page FISA warrant was in June 2017, which helps establish the timeline for Kleinsmith's actions. It is reported that it was Horowitz who handed over evidence to Durham of this alteration of a key FISA document, and Durham responded by opening an investigation into the matter. This is the second time in recent weeks that we've learned the Office of Inspector General had bombshell evidence directly related to the creation of the Trump-Russia collusion hoax in its possession for at least a year before divulging it. Due to a bombshell court filing in the Lieutenant General Michael Flynn perjury case on September 11th, it was discovered that the OIG had given Flynn's defense team documentary evidence that revealed FBI personnel had altered the FD 302 form from Flynn's FBI interview. That is why the sentencing of Flynn is being postponed until after the IG report, because what is in the IG report is going to exonerate him. Any theory or narrative that tries to explain how Powell obtained these 302 communications and begins with, and then Sidney Powell took an unauthorized disclosure from a grand jury proceeding and used it in her court filing in the Flynn case, is utter nonsense. It's obvious that the exculpatory evidence found in the 302 related texts and emails found their way into Powell's court filing via the proper legal disclosure process. If she had obtained this evidence through a grand jury leak or some other illegal means, Powell wouldn't dare use it in a court filing. And it's clear the 302 evidence came from Horowitz, since it's well known that he's the one who's been investigating, collecting, and cataloging the electronic communication of the top Spygate plotters since early January 2017. So at some point in all this collecting and compiling and studying of all these FBI communications, Horowitz discovers texts and emails that reveal that then FBI lawyer Lisa Page was making material edits to the Flynn 302 form. Wow. Since Horowitz started digging into these matters in January 2017, as he began his review of the FBI's handling of the Clinton email investigation, it's an open question as to exactly how long his office had all of these 302 and FISA evidence before it began sharing it. It could be longer than 2 years. Even if Horowitz only had possession of this bombshell evidence for just 1 year, it's simply amazing given the fact that Washington thrives on a leak culture. Strategic leaks of classified information are how the swamp protects itself. I want to underscore just how extraordinary it is that the OIG had 2 vital pieces of bombshell evidence directly foundational to the Russiagate hoax in its possession since early 2018 at the very latest, and that nobody in the office leaked it. Now, that says a lot. And if you remember, if you have been in on the whole Q phenomena from the very beginning, that is the first thing that Q stated they were doing, is plugging the leaks. And it would have been impossible for them to go forward without doing that. I want to underscore we just read that, and there's no reason for me to read it again. Unless there's really something wrong with you and you like things repeated. Nationwide, the DOJ's OIG has more than 450 people working for it. During the past 3 years that the Trump-Russia collusion hoax was dominating the news cycle, top OIG personnel were sitting on this evidence while their investigations continued. How many people inside the OIG could have leaked to the news media that Horowitz was in possession of documents that proved FBI FD 302 interview forms and FISA documents were both altered? However, many people at the OIG knew none violated their oath. They all kept the faith, and they all did their jobs. No one gave in to partisanship urges or abused the trust placed in them. They waited for the investigations to finish. For that, they are to be commended, and I salute them. And I think we would do well to salute them as well, because that is a job well done. That is called loving America. When you do your job, maybe not everybody in the OIG is a Trump fan or on board with his agenda or whatever, his policies, but they didn't leak. So that's incredible. All right, now let's go back, because we can, and let's look at this. I think this is very important. Yeah. Come for the news, stay for the collective eye rolls, because you're going to need it on this one. Really. We're going to have to do a collective eye roll. Dem congressional candidate Cenk Uygur once said he would legalize bestiality. That from today. This is fresh off the press. Yeah, he would legalize bestiality. Oh, and by the way, it is legal up here in Canada. One of the reasons why I want to come back to the States. Not really, but, well, yeah, I mean, it says a lot about a society that thinks it's okay to have sex with animals. All right. Now, let me say right up front that the information you're about to read in no way endorses the candidate, Cenk Uygur. It's a warning to urge Californians to wake up. His words indicate he has zero in the way of moral compass, and that's not what we need in Congress. Well, he'd fit in, wouldn't he? I mean, really, he'd fit right in. Cenk Uygur is running for Congress for the seat vacated by Katie Hill after she was caught having threesomes, which some say included a female member of her staff or her campaign committee, depending on who you believe. Uygur is now trying to take her place. In the past, he has defended bestiality, and he has said that it's okay as long as you pleasure the animal to completion. But how would you know? That's sick. Like, that's absolutely sick. He has also made some vulgar comments about women, once explaining a point system he developed that if a woman scored high enough, he would let her perform oral sex on him. Oh, yeah, some prize. Uygur is a member of the Young Turks, a far-left commentary site. And this is the guy. In 2013, he discusses what score a woman has to have if she asked to. Oh, I'm not going to even say that. Wow. All right. Yeah, these are all his tweets with his disgusting diatribe. Yeah, calls for legalizing bestiality where you are pleasuring the animal in 2013. And then it says, warning, explicit video. I have no intention of playing that video. This is what Uygur said about bestiality. Here comes the controversial part, I would say. I believe that if I were the benevolent dictator of the world, I would legalize bestiality where you are pleasuring the animal. Uygur went on to say that he has uncovered an incident of a man having sex with a horse. He claimed the man brought the horse to completion and therefore no one was harmed. In another interview, Uygur gave his rules for dating. One post from 2002 laid out Uyghur's 3 hard and fast rules of dating. The first rule he created is that there must be some serious making out by the 3rd date. If I haven't felt your boobages by then, he wrote, I don't know where that came from, boobages. I don't know. I was trying to avoid this word, but probably saying that word would have been better. He wrote, things are not about to last much longer. The second rule Uygur demanded women follow is that there must be orgasm by the 5th date. No ifs, ands, or buts. And if I haven't unloaded by this time, okay, this is really vile. He's just a vile man. And I really don't, let's come down to here past all his statements because first of all, I don't care what he thinks. The only part that concerns me is that this man is running for Congress. And this man has the audacity to run for Congress. The sad part is that he could win. As distasteful as all of this is, Californians need to be warned about scumbags like this who are trying to push their way into national leadership positions so they can mobilize to stop him. If he gets into office, his disgusting standards wouldn't affect just the state of California. He'd be in one of the highest offices in the land. If he talks and acts like this publicly, what do you suppose he would do behind closed doors? How could we possibly trust him to do the right things on issues that concern all of us as a nation? He gives the impression that he's only interested in satisfying his animal urges. He certainly has zero respect for women or animals, I would say. Yeah. And tell me, how does he determine whether the animal is giving its permission or if it is wanting to be pleasured by a human? Because it's so only human beings have the ability to be that sick and think those things. The animals are just like, hey, I want me another animal. They're not looking at human beings going, ooh, want some of that. All right. Let's go on. That was unpleasant. Now, this is important because I'm like, what? Do we have, like, are there two separate forms of government operating right now? The legal government, the elected government, and then the deep state? Because here it says, and this is CBS News, Pelosi to lead delegation to climate summit amid U.S. withdrawal from Paris climate deal. Does that not seem a little odd to you? Because it does to me. We've withdrawn from the Paris climate deal, and if a delegation is to go to the climate summit, wouldn't that be, the responsibility of Trump to appoint whoever's going to go? But Pelosi is just taking it on herself, it seems to me, anyway. Kind of like when she did the trip over to, where did she go? Well, it was right before the raid on al-Baghdadi. And yeah, she had been over there. She probably is the one that led the troops right to him, her and her delegation. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is leading a delegation of members of Congress to the annual International Climate Summit known as COP25 in Madrid, Spain next week. She just wants to go to Madrid and drink. She'll be sloshed on the plane. She'll drink all the way over there. She'll be sloshed, to the gills. And she won't do any work. When has she ever done any work? What has she done in the last 3 years? Nothing that I've seen. And her own district, she needs to stay home and clean up her own district is what she needs to do. She should be grounded. I don't know if there is such a thing for congressmen and women, but there should be. While the delegation will include members of both the House and Senate, it will not be bipartisan, as only Democrats will be attending. See what I'm saying? See why I'm questioning this? You know right now that Donald Trump, if he was going to send a delegation, it would be a bipartisan delegation. It wouldn't be just Democrats. It would never be just Democrats because you can't trust them. Anyway, it's a privilege to accompany a high-level congressional delegation to Spain to combat the existential threat of our time, the climate crisis, Pelosi said in a statement on Saturday. Taking action to protect our planet is a public health decision for clean air and clean water for our children, an economic decision for creating the green, good-paying jobs of the future, a national security decision to address resource competition and climate migration, and also a moral decision to be good stewards of God's creation. Yeah, like she cares about God's creation. And passes, if she did, she wouldn't be saying that it's okay to rip unborn babies from the womb and kill them after birth. Yeah, she's really caring about God's creation. And pass a sustainable, healthy planet to the next generation, she said. On behalf of the U.S. Congress, I am proud to travel to COP25 to reaffirm the commitment of the American people to combating the climate crisis. Well, you know what? The just Democrats are not a representation of the American people. That's not a representation. They're not going to present how Americans think and feel. They're going to present how Democrats think and feel. It's disgusting to me. This has gone way too far. And I'm holding on. I keep holding on because I keep thinking, okay, it's under control. They've got it under control. But it's quite disconcerting, to say the very least. All right. In 2016, attendees at COP25 summit in Paris, France, announced they would sign a pact to lower greenhouse gas emissions, a deal commonly known as the Paris Climate Agreement. President Trump announced the U.S. would withdraw from the agreement shortly after taking office, and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announced earlier this month the U.S. had begun formal proceedings to pull the U.S. out. The withdrawal process takes a year and will not become official until at least a day after the 2020 presidential election. The terms of the deal say no country can withdraw in the first 3 years, so November 4th, 2019 was the earliest the U.S. could actually start the withdrawal process. Climate experts largely agree that pulling out will hurt efforts to fight global warming. Well, I don't agree, and because this is CBS, of course, it's slanted. Global objectives, okay, well, blah, blah, blah. They're just going, the whole climate diatribe that they've all got memorized. The climate summit in Madrid is taking place shortly after the UN releases its annual emissions gap report, showing the amount of greenhouse gases being pumped into the atmosphere, hitting a new high last year, despite the pledges by several countries to reduce them. And okay. Says Mr. Trump is unlikely to attend the summit, but the administration will send a small delegation of career diplomats. Career diplomats. Oh, is that what they call them? Yeah. Mr. Trump is set to head to London next week to meet with other world leaders and mark the 70th anniversary of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO alliance. Yeah. A small delegation of career diplomats. Yeah, Pelosi is about as diplomatic as, I don't know. All right, so much to say and so much I shouldn't say. Okay, let's go back. Now, let's look at this. Isn't it interesting that the London police have dropped the Jeffrey Epstein investigation? And notice how it just magically disappears from the news once the London Bridge incident happened. So I'm not going to get into that because I think that we've had our fill of all that stuff. But they have decided to drop the investigation, London. Right. And then right after they dropped it, we had the very next day, there was the, incident. And to me, it's becoming more and more clear that it was an incident, an FF incident, and not terrorist related. Yes, I know they arrested somebody in a fake explosive vest. There's just too many anomalies, and I'm discovering more and more. So maybe I'll do a follow-up video on that at some point, but I need to get caught up with the news first. All right, and let's go to this. A best-selling author, I'm sure most of you have heard about this by now, maybe not. If you're listening to any mainstream news, you'll never hear this. A best-selling author who exposed corruption in the vaccine industry was found dead this week with 2 gunshots to the head. Meanwhile, the Clintons have been on Twitter telling everyone how thankful they are for vaccines. No coincidences. Yeah. So the Clintons have got to be profiting in some way from vaccines. They really do. Because they're all over, oh, I'm so thankful for vaccines. Oh, I'm just so thankful. Oh, God bless vaccines. Not that I'm against, but, well, I am against. Sorry, don't try to change my mind. Honestly, this is one situation. If you disagree with me, disagree with me. We'll agree to disagree, and I can respect you. Even though you don't agree with me, that's not an issue. So don't try to argue with me and say, no, but this, but that. I've been through it all with so many people, and it's not worth it to me. It's a waste of my time, energy, and everything else. So just agree to disagree. I'm not for them. I've never, I think that's why my cats live so long, because I didn't vaccinate them. Now, if you have pets that are outside and could get rabies, that's not wise, but anyway, I'm talking about, it's part of the whole globalist agenda, the 2030 agenda, and the depopulation. there's stuff in there that is not good. And I know you can quote as many doctors and whatever specialists, whatever you want, but you'll never convince me of this because I've looked at too many facts. All right. I just had to say that. Otherwise, the whole comment section would be filled with, what? Yeah. So, and in fact, if you try to engage in the whole debate, I will erase it because I don't want the whole thing to become that. It's worthless. We can agree to disagree. Okay. All right. Let's look at this. This is pretty fresh. It's from yesterday. Undercover female FBI agent infiltrated Al-Qaeda. Then FBI bosses terminated the top secret operation and buried key intel before the 9/11 terror strikes. Whew, that's huge. It says, warning, there is graphic language in this story. Well, I will try to avoid it if I can. The FBI was in the catbird seat. It's 2000 and Bill Clinton is president. Louis Freeh is FBI director, and things are going swimmingly for an undercover FBI operation that has cracked and infiltrated Al-Qaeda. That is no easy feat, mainly because these FBI agents and operators haven't even left the United States. Instead, working on a little known and top secret operation, FBI intel folks have finally convinced Osama bin Laden's henchmen and terror captains that they are radical Muslims willing to wage jihad in the United States in the name of the terror mastermind. After working 3 years undercover, exchanging thousands of emails and online chats with Al-Qaeda's hierarchy in the Middle East, one FBI operator has really stood out to Al-Qaeda management, showing true disdain for American infidels and all the hallmarks of radicalized Muslim. The undercover FBI operator has conned the brightest terrorists in the business, and that's incredible news for the FBI and CIA, who, at the time, were struggling to find a foothold and human intelligence peg inside the global terror fraction and its related cell known as Al-Qaeda. But that has all changed now. In fact, the FBI was not only finally inside Al-Qaeda, but undercover moles were invited to join its board of directors, and yes, bin Laden did run the radicalized group, much like a corporation, insiders confirm, but bin Laden wanted to expand and he had big plans for the United States. First and foremost, beyond the killing of innocent Americans, he tried to domesticate millions of Al-Qaeda funds in banks, He tried to domesticate millions of Al-Qaeda funds in banks and brokerage houses in the United States, and by domesticate? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm like seeing things here. He tried to domesticate millions of Al-Qaeda funds in banks and brokerage houses in the United States, and by domesticate, we mean laundering money. Osama bin Laden recognized the challenge of financing terror and propaganda campaigns in his country, absent domestic payment routes. Blind Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman learned this the hard way after masterminding the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Centers in New York, the first strike in Lower Manhattan. The warm-up strike, Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman used German banks to finance the 1993 bombing, and it was one wire from a German bank that helped lead the FBI to the Jersey City, New Jersey doorsteps of the men who blew up one of the Twin Towers, and also led them to Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman. I was there as FBI executives negotiated with my newspaper's brass to keep that intel quiet about the German bank until they could trace the wire and its proceeds in a journey to find and arrest the perpetrators. This was my newspaper at the time, so I had a front row seat. It was the first time I saw how the game was really played. Wait, media companies cut deals with the feds? Companies cut deals with the feds, I thought. My newspaper is playing nice with these guys. What was that all about? If you have dirt on terror suspects, I was adamant. Print it and let the feds sort it out. Scoop the FBI. F the feds. I was a rookie. I remember the FBI executives from the New York field office laughing as they exited the conference room, and I thought about those same agents chuckling less than a month later when the FBI negotiation torched children in Waco, Texas, and these editors thought they had cut a favorable deal with the FBI. I thought this was sharks and minnows, and I was employed by the minnows. Newspapers and television always buckle to the FBI, State Department, et al. Because these agencies threaten to jail editors and publishers over national security breaches if they do not do exactly as the feds say. And the cowards in the media almost always buckle. I would see this scenario play out time and time again during my newspaper career when we had eyewitness testimony from dozens of New York residents who reported a fast-moving projectile was flying at TWA Flight 800 seconds before it went down. That story was killed too, just like the World Trade Center story. The State Department had threatened to lock me up personally on the TWA 800 story, and the newspaper bosses killed it. The FBI and the State Department, CIA, were streamlined. I had, a day earlier, snuck in an eyewitness account of a major in the New York Air National Guard who flew sorties in Vietnam. He was flying maneuvers at the time Flight 800 went down and told me he too spotted what appeared to be a missile strike the TWA flight. And we printed that, and it set off a shite storm in D.C. The source, who was on the record, was all but put in the federal witness protection program, and the feds leaned on the paper for a retraction and correction and clamped down on my ass after that one. I had scored one for the good guy sneaking his testimony into the paper, but it was one of the last statements the major gave. I don't believe he ever spoke of what he saw in the July sky that evening. They shut him up faster than they did my newspaper. NBC's Bryant Gumbel was standing beside me during the same interview on the beach dunes in East not sure how to pronounce that, Moriches, New York. The sun had just come up the day after the crash, and the sunrise that morning was indeed a beautiful thing. That day, a strange backdrop as first responders were fishing 400 or so bodies out of the water and putting them in refrigerated trucks. Grumble never did run the bombshell interview on NBC News or the Today Show. Is anyone surprised? That was a smoking gun, and NBC buried that probably somewhere on the beach near where the teddy bears, suitcases, and personal belongings of the downed passengers were washing up with the morning tide. I believe the journalism game was about telling the truth and not playing patty cake with the feds, but I had much to learn. Let's get back to the German money behind the first World Trade Center attack. That $50,000 wire led the FBI to the terrorists, and their leader, bin Laden, feared this years before. Absent a network inside of shell companies making wire transfers and deposits inside the United States banking infrastructure, this was bound to happen time and time again. In fact, per emails exchanged between undercover FBI operators posing as radicalized Muslims poised to wage jihad in the United States, with al-Qaeda lieutenants and captains, the terror conglomerate was desperately seeking to branch into the United States, employ U.S. banks, and also enhance its online backbone of servers so that emails could be shrouded from the NSA, CIA, and U.S. intel apparatus. And do you remember that undercover FBI agent I described earlier who had caught the attention of bin Laden and his boardroom of terror bosses? Word spread through al-Qaeda leadership circles in the Middle East. They had found their guy in the United States. He had brains, contacts, a disdain for his country, and the connections to help plan bin Laden's expansion into the U.S., both financially and radically. Now, al-Qaeda had found their man, except their man was actually a woman. Her name is Alexandra Mogilner. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right. The irony here is thick, obviously. Women can't even show their faces in public in the Middle East and are often treated and beaten like dogs. But the biggest, baddest terror group in the world had just been compromised by a female FBI operator. And when al-Qaeda fell for Mogilner, it fell hard. For the feds, it was a grand slam, with terror leaders offering her and unknowingly the federal government of the United States the keys and recipe to unravel bin Laden's entire operation. Al-Qaeda wanted Mogilner to handle the money laundering in the United States and help Al-Qaeda to migrate its emails and international communications to an offshore server. and she would serve as the administrator and maintain the server. In essence, Mogilner, who was believed to be a radicalized U.S. male, would have every email written to and from top al-Qaeda management. This bombshell plus the oversight of al-Qaeda's money laundering inside the United States. 3 years of undercover work had struck gold, and this was the motherlode. The FBI, we had an opportunity to have bin Laden's server and have everything al-Qaeda did online go through our control, Mogilner said, and he wanted us to be his treasurer in the United States, to launder money and make stateside payoffs to and for his terror cartel. But the FBI thought it was not worth the $50,000 a year that it would cost to do it. Mogilner told me during an interview, Mogilner and her FBI commissioned crew had infiltrated the biggest terror cartel in the world, posing as Muslim males and would-be jihadists, and the FBI walked away from the operation once she and federal operators had broken through a once impenetrable wall to have an insider's seat at al-Qaeda's big table. The FBI walked away from a goldmine of intel that could have changed the course of history. Literally. 1 year later, after the FBI walked away, the Twin Towers crumbled, Pentagon walls tumbled, and a hijacked commercial airline headed for the White House crashed in western Pennsylvania, all within a matter of an hour on September 11th, 2001. The FBI had sold out again, a recurring theme now for decades. Back then, FBI executives could blame it on Bill Clinton. And he, indeed, was to blame. But it was the FBI, Bill Clinton's FBI, that took its own fox out of the al-Qaeda henhouse, and that stunned undercover operatives who broke their asses to pull off what was previously considered impossible. Mogilner details her groundbreaking undercover work for the FBI. They were looking for their own server, al-Qaeda was, so they could have security and have got an exclusive server. And then we had the offer. We ended up being part of their board of directors. Essentially, the heads of each of al-Qaeda's departments were organized just like a big corporation. They wanted us to be treasurer for all of his money in the United States and to provide the server to keep tabs on al-Qaeda. Mogilner said between 1999 and 2000, FBI executives calculated it would cost the equivalent of a mid-level agent's salary to pull off this coup, or roughly $52,000 a year. They said it wasn't worth it, Mogilner recalls with disgust. Mogilner's famous and now infamous op and group were dubbed the Muslim Hackers Club. It doesn't have a rock and roll ring to it like Crossfire Hurricane, but the difference here is one was an actual operation and one was a fabrication of mainstream media and corrupt FBI brass running for cover. Mogilner had brought bin Laden's operation on a silver platter to her FBI overlords, and they punted. I was basically on al-Qaeda's board of directors and invited to be its U.S. treasurer, she said. We volunteered to provide bin Laden with a computer server. I said, we'll provide you with a server and we'll make it look like it was located outside the United States, Canada, or Mexico. We would have known everything al-Qaeda was doing, what they were planning, but the FBI decided bin Laden wasn't very important. We were already inside for 2 years, beginning in 1998. We did obtain a lot of their emails. But Mogilner stresses the FBI and the U.S. intelligence apparatus could have had all al-Qaeda's emails. That's a massive difference compared to merely a small sampling of emails. And the difference between intel gleaned from such emails could literally save lives and help put a severe dent in al-Qaeda's global terror network and radical mayhem, and potentially pinpoint many mainstream players linked to bin Laden who were hiding in plain sight in normal, traditional careers. The guy who was doing their al-Qaeda stuff online, the guy who was doing their al-Qaeda online stuff, money laundering and running their online presence, actually worked at J.P. Morgan in London, she admitted. Mogilner would not identify the subject, but said he was a key IT worker for the bank who was fired after the financial conglomerate learned of his alleged connection to al-Qaeda. Stunningly, however, Mogilner said the FBI did not pursue the man, nor did British intelligence arms MI5 or MI6, who are tasked with investigating terrorism. She said he took a job with another company and was never charged or even interrogated, to her knowledge. He was a member of al-Qaeda, running their money laundering, running their empire, if you want to call it that, she said. It was all very international and very large. They, FBI, weren't interested in him and never did anything that I know of. How in the hell would the FBI or CIA walk away from such a gem like the J.P. Morgan connection? Well, they just didn't care, Mogilner said. They didn't want to spend the money. Al-Qaeda wasn't important, and they said that everybody knew bin Laden wasn't important. Bin Laden had other operations going that were considered by the FBI to be very unimportant, but that bin Laden, considered tremendously important. And I think bin Laden was correct. And the FBI, again, was on the wrong side of yet another case to protect America's best interests, and on the wrong side of history again. Bin Laden's had big propaganda, publicity programs going in Bosnia, Chechnya, and many other locales like the United States, Mogilner said. He was trying to turn public opinion about his operations, and he did a pretty darn good job of it. But this wasn't merely any public relations firm prepping news releases and coaxing reporters to shower a political figure with good press. Quite the opposite. Bin Laden was running a cartel of skullduggery, planting fake news and putting cash behind his causes, hired muscle to steer his propaganda campaigns via force and good old-fashioned terrorism. For example, in Bosnia, they backed Hezbollah and Chechen fighters that came in, Mogilner said. They would put out news stories. They attacked people. They saw that they were going to have to be new leadership, so they backed people they wanted for leaders after the war and did all kinds of things. And to a great extent, it worked. Sounds like many U.S. Democratic politicians might have read bin Laden's Guide to Political Skullduggery. And what you're reading here, folks, indeed is a rare look behind the curtain. Very rare. Don't let this gem slip through your fingers. Mogilner, the American woman who infiltrated al-Qaeda posing as a Muslim man, was interested in pursuing bin Laden's connections to politics and politicians and elections in countries that included the United States. But the FBI didn't want anything to do with bin Laden's potential infiltration of Washington, D.C., or to ascertain if portions of the news media and elected officials were receiving terror-backed financing. Is this why Bill Clinton's administration and his FBI walked away from the Muslim Hackers Club? Was Osama bin Laden financing U.S. politicians and news agencies or public relation firms? Or even worse, was bin Laden using his banking contacts in companies like J.P. Morgan to dig up dirt on politicians worldwide to use the damaging information to blackmail politicians or media executives? The FBI pulled the plug on the operation that could have answered all of those questions. It appears to be another case where the FBI and its deep state overlords did not want such vital intelligence to fall into the hands of the Bureau's rank-and-file agents. That is always a concern during institutionalized corruption. Honest agents could blow the whistle on malfeasance and wrongdoing. But the feds did not want the keys to al-Qaeda's kingdom. And as a key player like Mogilner attests, as a key player like Mogilner attests, and lives were lost, the unfortunate yet familiar cost of poor or deliberate or both FBI decisions that stretch over the last 20 years at least. Many of these gaffes are intentional. No one, not even the FBI, could prove this chronologically, feckless mathematically. It's almost an impossibility. It defies advanced mathematics if these mistakes were by chance or just happenstance. And in 2001, Americans watched in sheer horror as the country and the world changed forever on September 11th, as the media looped footage of the planes crashing into the World Trade Centers before they crumbled to the ground like sandcastles washed away by a high tide. Meanwhile, al-Qaeda was, of course, a household name and a global threat, and the FBI had walked away from controlling and crushing bin Laden's terror conglomerate just months earlier, like cowards or traitors or both. I can attest to this statement personally. Before, during, and after 9/11, while my group was working for the FBI and feds, we were also working for America Online. Its director of security was former CIA spook and friend, and we loved doing AOL's dirty work, and it was easy money, really, because, folks, AOL was flush with cash, and more importantly, we had access to AOL's resources, which certainly augmented our federal work. Feds need to crack an email address without the hassle of a warrant, or they need it in 30 minutes because they're up on a wire or surveilling a target. They come to us. We back channel the intel and make a nice dime. AOL's legal folks approved of the arrangement until the web giant fired its head counsel during its decline, and my contact followed. To this day, however, I still get blamed for his demise, but, spoiler alert, AOL sunk faster than the Titanic, and there are no golden parachutes on a shipwreck. My point here is this. We knew the al-Qaeda terrorists who hijacked the planes to carry out the 9/11 attacks were employing AOL and its instant message chat to plan the strike. If the FBI had listened to Mogilner and her groundbreaking Al-Qaeda Hackers Club, the FBI would have known this too before the strikes. I can hear folks now saying, "Oh, how did you know the terrorists used AOL?" Anyone can make a statement like that. Actually, that's a valid point, and why I decided to document it within 48 hours after the 9/11 attack in 2001, a fact that angered FBI brass. But I had seen them cover up so much shite in other ops, I had to put them on notice, as well as the general public, that if the FBI had been monitoring Al-Qaeda's communications like Mogilner illustrated in this book, perhaps things would have been different. At the time, I knew the FBI had dropped the ball on this, and my group issued this intelligence publicly in newswires on September 13th, 2001. It is documented forever. It was the first real public confirmation that Osama bin Laden was linked to the 9/11 attacks. And this is the newswire from September 13th. It says the following was issued today by digdirt.com. Federal agents have developed what they believe is the first concrete evidence linking Tuesday's deadly terror attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon to the terrorist network of Osama bin Laden, according to the U.S. intelligence officials. Federal agents have successfully... Okay, I don't think we need to read all that because I think that we are quite aware of that. So this is, if you ask me, and this has been reprinted by a book that I'm currently reading, How We Dismantled the FBI in Our Pajamas by Thomas Paine. Really, really interesting stuff. And I just felt a need to share that because it's news to me. I never heard this before. So hopefully it didn't bore you too much. I know it was a very long article, but I wanted to be sure that you heard this. And I think I am going to probably sum this up pretty quickly, but I will just go for another couple minutes. Then I'm going to stop this video. And if my voice continues to be okay, it seems fine now, then I may do a second video. So, but let's just finish off here. Okay, this from Charlie Kirk. The FBI attorney under investigation for doctoring FISA documents sent this to another FBI employee. As I have initiated the destruction of the Republic, would you be so kind as to have coffee with me? Can you imagine? That's what they wrote. The person that doctored the FISA warrants said, as I have initiated the destruction of the Republic, would you be so kind as to have a coffee with me? This is the deep state at work. How is this not a major news story? I'd like to know that too. I really would. But I think we know why, right? And let me see. I think what I'm going to do here, because I still have some people to thank, and I didn't get through too much here, but hopefully we got some interesting things here. And I'm going to thank a couple people, and then I think I will Possibly, if my voice continues to hold out, I'll do a second video. All right, now let me get to these people that I want to thank. Up here, way up here. All right, so these are people that have donated through a coffee. Linda, she's a longtime listener. Anon, and he wrote that been in the hospital on a ventilator and missed your show. Getting stronger every day. Praise Jesus. I can say that to you knowing you are a Christian. I'm only 50. You sound better. But if you feel sick again, please go to ER. And thank you for that. But the reason why I wouldn't normally put a comment like this from somebody because it's personal, but I did this so that we could pray for this person. I'm not sure. They just said their name is Anon. I'm not sure if it's a male or female. Somehow I think it's a male, but I'm not sure. So if we could pray for this person, God knows who they are, and God knows what their needs are. So if you are a believer, please pray for this person. And thank you, Anon, for donating. And also Patreon, we got some new Patreon supporters. Alyssa Daniels, she increased her pledge. She's not a new supporter, but she increased her pledge. Thank you very much. Terry Todd, Lisa Haggins, and Melinda Mandis are all new Patreon supporters. Thank you so much. It helps more than you know because, well, I know I've said it a lot of times. I don't sell anything on this channel. And I don't have any advertising. I've been demonetized by YouTube, so it does help. And snail mail, Lorraine, I'm kind of hesitant to say your last name, but I hope it's okay to say your last name. Lorraine Roush from Utah. You've got to see what this woman sent me. And I've got to go over here so I can see if you can see it. All right. This probably isn't going to do it justice, but make sure that it's the right. Now, she made this and it's beautiful. I want to, it's kind of not giving it all in its glory, but look at this. This is a queue that's attached and this little, and really you can like take it to the market. I guess you could take it to the beach. You could use it as a purse. You could take it shopping, but inside are all these little pockets too. Wait, I got little pockets in here. Like, it's absolutely gorgeous. Everyone that's seen it has been like, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. I knew, like, as soon as I opened the package, I didn't know what it was, but I saw the material and I went, I don't know what this is, but I love it. And I really do love it. And the more I look at it and the more I see it, the more I love it. I love the material. The craftsmanship on this is incredible, like all fancy stitching along here. It really is incredible. And I'll show you this too, because she sent these for the cats. These are little toys with catnip in them. You probably can't see that. It's probably blurry, but yeah. And I haven't given them to the cats because I wanted to show you guys, and I thought by the time they've chewed them all up then. So now I'll throw them down and let the cats play with them. But yeah, I was just so impressed with this and touched. I wanted to cry because I don't know, it just makes me feel like this person took the time. It cost a lot of money for her to send this to me. And not only that, but the material and all the work that went into this. And when people do that, it just, I don't know, it really touches me because I think, my gosh, you know, they sort of know me, but it's like, I don't know. I wish I could explain to you in words how it makes me feel. And the person that, sent me it was like a painted tile with me and the two cats, and I just loved it. Anyway, that is it for tonight, guys. And thank you so much for listening. I wish I could convey to you how much I appreciate you guys and the comments that you leave. And sure, there's some shills every now and then on the channel and people that say ignorant things, but I ignore that for the most part because there are so many of you that are so kind and have been with me for a long time. So I appreciate it. And you guys have a wonderful evening. Stay safe, Stay well, stay blessed, and Epstein didn't kill himself.